The manager told me I couldn't afford anything in his luxury store. His words were like a slap in the face, causing a few customers to glance over. My face grew hot, but instead of responding, I quietly turned and walked out of the store. The next day, a Bentley pulled up right in front of the shop. I got out and looked through the window. The manager stood there, his eyes wide, completely stunned. My husband had bought the entire store. My name is Clara Dubois. I'm 35 years old. As a music event organizer, I had come to Vienna after a business trip, looking for a special gift for Professor Alara Voss. My old teacher was about to receive a major Lifetime Achievement Award for his dedication to music, and I wanted the gift to be an expression of gratitude that went beyond words. I found my way to the Meister Geigen von Strauss store on an old street, which displayed some of the world's most precious violins. My work was done, so I was dressed in a simple pair of jeans and a sweater. As I walked in, my attention was immediately drawn to an antique violin, the Vienna Sonnet, sparkling in a display case. I knew instantly that it was the perfect gift. It wasn't just an instrument, it was a legacy, a piece of musical history that my teacher cherished. Giving it to him felt like returning a piece of the soul of music he had taught me. However, my hopes quickly faded when the manager, Julian Adler, noticed me. He didn't hide his disdain, his eyes scanning me from head to toe before he turned and whispered to another employee, as if I were only there to dream. Anger started to burn, heating my cheeks as he approached. "The instruments here are very expensive," he said, his voice full of arrogance. His eyes never left my simple clothes. I tried to suppress my emotions, walking straight to the display case where the violin lay alone, illuminated like a treasure. I stood there, admiring its beauty, my heart full of hope for the gift I would give my teacher. "Guten Tag," his voice rang out from behind me, full of sarcasm. I turned around and he asked, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" But his tone implied the opposite. He continued, "But perhaps you should know, its annual insurance value far exceeds what you can afford." He didn't ask what I wanted, didn't offer an introduction, just implicitly assumed I didn't have the money. His words were like a slap. I wanted to reply, but my anger silenced me. Our conversation hadn't even begun, but he had ended it with an insult. And that was the beginning of everything. A small, dry laugh escaped when I tried to ask more about the violin. "Madam, this is the Vienna Sonnet. Its value is equivalent to a penthouse apartment in District 1. We cannot waste our artisans' time answering questions for people who are merely curious," he said. He deliberately spoke loudly, enough for a famous musician trying a cello nearby to look up. He looked at me, then at Adler, with a hint of concern in his eyes. I knew he was doing it on purpose. My patience was gone. I looked him straight in the eyes and, one word at a time, said decisively, "I have the financial means." That sentence changed everything. His fake politeness vanished, and Adler's annoyance was obvious. "Oh, really?" he asked, his voice full of skepticism. "Madam, transactions here are conducted through private Swiss banks, not with ordinary credit cards. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an important appointment." It was a polite dismissal, an insult. Just then, a young man emerged from the workshop in the back. He was wearing a leather apron and looked worried. "Mr. Adler, maybe I can help her," he began. "Go back to the polishing workshop, Leo." "This is not your business," Julian sneered, cutting him off. Leo backed away, his face flushed. That was enough. I didn't say another word. There was no point. I looked Julian Adler straight in the eyes one last time, seeing the undisguised contempt there. I turned and walked straight out the door. As I pushed the oak door open, the small bronze bell rang. This time, it wasn't a clear sound, but more like a weary sigh. The flight from Vienna to London took just over 2 hours, but the feeling of humiliation lasted much longer. I returned to our quiet house in Holland Park, a complete contrast to the noise in my head. Alistair, my husband, was in his study, sitting in front of several screens displaying complex financial charts. He is a man of numbers and logic. He looked up when I walked in. Just 1 second of looking at me, he understood something was wrong. "Tea?" he asked. We sat in the living room. He made tea, the Earl Grey that I like. He didn't say anything, just waited for me to be ready. That's one of the things I love about him. He always gives me space. Finally, I told him everything. About the store, Julian Adler, the violin, the way he looked at me, the way he talked, and the silence of the others. When I finished, I added, "Alistair, I'm not really angry because he looked down on me. I'm used to that. I'm angry because of that attitude. I thought of the children in the Fondation Lumière. I thought of Omar, the young Syrian refugee with a natural talent. I thought of all the other children we are helping. If one day," I said, "Omar saves enough money to walk into a place like that, will he be treated the same way? Will his talent be extinguished by that arrogance? That's what makes me so angry." Alistair was silent for a long moment. He looked out the window, but I knew he was thinking. Then he turned to me, reached across the table, and took my hand. His hand was warm and steady. "Clara," he said, his voice deep and decisive, "you taught me that true value cannot be measured in money. It's time we taught them that lesson." He didn't say much more. He didn't need to. I saw the determination in his blue eyes, and I knew that Julian Adler would soon regret this day. That evening, we didn't talk about revenge. Revenge is a simple, hot emotion. Alistair's plan was different. It was cold, precise, and carefully calculated. We talked about a performance, a lesson in truth. "I won't go to Vienna," Alistair said as we sat in his study. "My presence would be too obvious. We need a more subtle approach." He looked at me. "Tomorrow, my lawyer will go to Vienna. He won't go as my representative. He will be someone else entirely." Alistair picked up the phone. The first call was to Zurich, to his private lawyer, Mr. Dubois, a discreet and efficient Swiss man. I heard Alistair speaking in German, his voice calm and his orders clear. He outlined a role for Mr. Dubois, a weary representative of an anonymous tycoon who was tired of auctions and wanted a private transaction. The second call was to Paris, to a famous art appraiser, an old family friend of mine. Alistair explained the situation. The friend's mission was to provide Mr. Dubois with all the necessary technical information about the Vienna sonnet, enough for him to speak like a true expert. The final call was to his personal assistant. He asked her to prepare a complete profile of a fictional collector, including a history of transactions and the necessary banking documents. Everything had to be perfect, with no loopholes. When he put the phone down, the room became silent. An elegant play, with a distinct European flair, had been staged. The actors had their roles. The stage was set. The next day, in Vienna, everything went according to plan. An older man walked into the Meister Geigen von Strauss store. He was wearing a perfectly tailored Italian suit and carrying a vintage leather briefcase. He looked a bit tired and impatient, like someone who was too familiar with wealth to find it interesting anymore. That was Mr. Dubois, Alistair's lawyer. But today, he introduced himself as Mr. Rossi. He told the receptionist in a low voice that he was there to represent an anonymous collector. His client wanted to make a quick and discreet purchase without going through noisy auctions. The information was immediately relayed to Julian Adler. Julian's reaction was exactly as Alistair had predicted. He was like a man who had struck gold. An anonymous, wealthy collector who wanted a private transaction that was every high-end sales manager's dream. It meant a huge commission and no competition. Julian rushed out of his office, his face beaming. He greeted Mr. Rossi with a warm smile and an enthusiasm that I hadn't seen the day before. "Mr. Rossi, what a great honor," he said. "Please come this way. We have a private listening room to ensure your absolute comfort and privacy." He led Mr. Dubois into a luxurious room, paneled with wood and covered with a Persian rug. He immediately motioned for an employee to bring out the finest Austrian wine. "Please, make yourself at home," Julian said, personally pouring wine for Mr. Dubois. "I will personally introduce you to our most valuable masterpieces. Whatever your client desires, we can fulfill it." He didn't realize that the man sitting across from him wasn't a client. He was a messenger, and the trap had been set. Julian Adler put on a full show. He brought out the most valuable violins, told stories about their history, and endlessly flattered the anonymous client's discerning eye. Mr. Dubois, in his role as Mr. Rossi, just nodded politely. He examined each violin with the air of an expert, thanks to the information the appraiser in Paris had provided. He was waiting for the right moment. After nearly an hour, when Julian thought he had completely won the guest's trust, Mr. Dubois stood up. He walked around the room, then stopped in front of the display case where the Vienna sonnet was exhibited. He pointed at it. "My collector is particularly interested in this violin." Julian's eyes lit up. This was the biggest target. He quickly added his own spin. "A perfect choice. Sir, your client is truly a connoisseur," he said, his voice full of flattery. "How fortunate it is still here. Just yesterday, a rather ordinary-looking woman was insisting on buying it. Of course, I had to politely refuse in order to save this masterpiece for a truly knowledgeable person like your client." He had said it. He had tied the noose around his own neck. Mr. Dubois looked directly at Julian. His polite smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, calm expression. "That ordinary woman," Mr. Dubois said, his voice clear and sharp, "is the founder of the Fondation Lumière, Mrs. Clara Dubois." He paused for a second to let the words sink into the air. "And the anonymous collector who sent me here," he continued, "is her husband." Mr. Dubois placed his leather briefcase on the table. He opened it and took out a thin file. He pushed it toward Julian. The first page was a photo. It was a picture of me and Alistair, taken at a Lumière Foundation charity gala. Below it was a short article about the foundation's work. Julian Adler looked at the photo. He looked at my face, then at Alistair standing next to me. He looked at the name Alistair Finch in bold letters. All color drained from his face. He stood frozen, his mouth open, but unable to say a word. He looked like a statue caught mid-motion. Das ist unmöglich," he stammered in German. That's impossible." "Oh, it's entirely possible," Mr. Dubois continued, his voice now cold as ice. "And there's one more thing. Mrs. Dubois' husband, Mr. Alistair Finch, believes that an instrument with a soul like the Vienna sonnet should not be in the hands of a soulless salesman." He stood up and buttoned his suit jacket. "He has authorized me to make one final announcement," he said, looking directly into Julian's horrified eyes. "This morning, he finalized the purchase of all the remaining shares of the Strauss family in this store. From this moment on, Mr. Alistair Finch is the new owner of Meister Geigen von Strauss." Julian Adler didn't fall down. He simply collapsed in place, having to grab the arm of a chair to stay upright. His world, a world built on judging appearances and fat commissions, had shattered in a matter of seconds. Mr. Dubois said nothing more. He simply left the file on the table, nodded goodbye, and quietly left, leaving Julian alone in the eerie silence of the luxurious listening room. That evening, I received an email from Julian Adler. It was short, filled with desperate apologies. He begged for a chance to talk, to explain, to keep his job. I showed the email to Alistair. He read it and said, "He'll get a chance, but not in the way he thinks." The next day, Mr. Dubois met Julian at the store again. But this time, there was no role-playing. Mr. Dubois came as the lawyer representing the new owner. Julian looked as if he had aged 10 years. He stood before Mr. Dubois with not a trace of his former arrogance. Mr. Dubois delivered Alistair's decision. "Mr. Finch believes that firing you is the easiest way, but not the best way," Mr. Dubois said. "He wants to give you a chance to learn a lesson. If you want to keep your job here, You must accept the following conditions. Mr. Dubois presented a list. First, he said, you, Julian Adler, will join the board of Fondation Lumière for 1 year. You will not receive a salary. Your task will be to take responsibility for the program that selects and awards scholarships to young talents. You will have to go to poor neighborhoods, meet with immigrant families, and find the true rough gems. Julian swallowed hard, but did not dare to object. Second, Mr. Dubois continued, the Meister Geigen von Strauss's store, as an asset of Mr. Finch, will become the main sponsor for the Lumière Foundation. The store will provide free instrument repair and maintenance services for all students of the foundation. You will be the one to oversee this program. And finally, Mr. Dubois said, his voice unchanged regarding the violin, the Vienna Sonnet. It will be transferred to Mrs. Clara Dubois. This transaction will be handled by another employee. He glanced at his notes. Leo, the apprentice, he will be responsible for completing the paperwork. The entire commission from the sale of this instrument will be given to him. Mr. Finch believes it is a deserving bonus. That money will be enough for him to attend the prestigious violin-making school in Cremona, Italy. Mr. Dubois folded the paper. These are the conditions. You have 24 hours to decide. Accept or leave. There was no other choice. Julian Adler, the man who had once mocked me, now had to work for me. His lesson had just begun. 3 months later, the Meister Geigen von Strauss store had changed. The luxurious space, once reserved only for the wealthy, had been transformed into a stage. The proud silence was gone, replaced by the sound of music and applause. It was the debut concert for the partnership program between the store and the Lumière Foundation. The main stage belonged to our young talents. These were children from all over the world, children who probably would never have had the opportunity to step foot in here without this change. I stood in a corner of the room, next to Alistair. I wasn't looking for Julian, but I saw him anyway. He wasn't wearing his usual expensive suit, just a simple shirt. He stood among the crowd, not as a manager, but as a member of the audience. I saw Julian intently listening to a young Ukrainian girl play a piece by Bach. She was only 12, and the violin in her hands was almost as big as she was. But the melody she created was powerful and full of emotion. When she finished the piece, the entire room erupted in applause. I saw Julian clapping too, and for the first time, I saw a real smile on his face, a warm, genuine smile. After the concert, Julian came to find me. He looked hesitant. Mrs. Dubois, he began, his voice no longer confident. The performance was wonderful. Thank you, Julian. The children worked very hard, I replied. He was silent for a moment, then continued, his voice sincere. I used to think that the value of a violin lay in the name of the maker and its price. But when I saw these children playing music, I realized that the true value lies in the melody it creates and the joy it brings. It was the most sincere apology he could have given. I nodded. I'm glad you understand, Julian. Just then, Alistair came and stood beside me. He placed a hand on my shoulder, then turned to speak to Julian. We are planning to expand the Lumière Foundation globally, Alistair said. We need an executive director who understands both business and music. Do you think you would be a good fit? Julian was stunned. He looked at Alistair, then at me, unable to believe what he had just heard. A second chance, a real chance, was being offered to him when he least expected it. I looked at Julian, who was taken aback by the offer. I looked out at the stage, where Omar, our most talented refugee boy, was holding the Vienna Sonnet violin that Professor Voss had lent him for the performance. I knew that the symphony of that day was not just about music. It was a symphony of truth, of compassion, and of the belief that the light of talent can shine brightest when it is placed in a space of respect and understanding.